When it comes to card games, a lot of people have memories of playing Yu-Gi-Oh, Uno, or even just playing with a deck of cards. One of the many reasons why card games are universal is because they are easy to learn but hard to master, and they have just enough randomness to make nearly every game that little bit different. Now, what if a game had the skill and randomness of a card game, but also introduced the unforgivingness of the roguelike genre? Well, Slay the Spire mixes the best parts of both genres. But to see if Slay the Spire is for you, let's look at what the game is and how it runs on console. So Slay the Spire is a roguelike deck building video game that has a very simplified art style and combat animation. It is something that you will either love or hate. However, in saying that the aesthetic is simplified, there has been care taken in the user experience, with minor details like highlighting around the edges of cards to contrast against the normally darker game palette, and the writing on the cards being concise enough that you can quickly read them from a glance. But aesthetic aside, what does Slay the Spire actually play like? Well, you start off the game with the character Ironclad. However, as you play, you can unlock 3 other playable characters. Each of these characters have their own unique ability, individual cards, and different levels of gold and health. So this means each character has its own unique different playstyle. So once you choose your character, your goal is to try and make it turn by turn to the end, to try to beat the final boss. As you can see, it's like a board game. You will move from one position to the next, and because the game is procedurally generated, each map and path to the end will be different. Now as you can see, each tile you move to will have a different procedurally generated event determined by its symbol. So these include an enemy battle encounter, a random choice event that will have a positive or a negative on your character, a campfire that you can use to heal or upgrade a card, a chest that has loot, finally a shopkeeper where you can buy certain cards, relics, potions, or destroy a card from your deck. Now, because every time you play you have a completely random map layout, it means you'll have to look forward at the map to see what your deck needs and plan accordingly. So this might mean aiming for a campfire to quickly heal, or heading towards a market to remove some cards that are wasting space in your deck. So, with the overall game premise aside, let's look into the gameplay. By that I mean the combat. You start off the game with a certain amount of cards, which each have their own ability. So cards will generally work by doing enemy damage, blocking to create a shield for you, support cards, and cards that buff and debuff. So the game breaks up these categories into attack, skill, power, status, and curse. Each card also has a cost, so this means you can only play a certain amount of cards per turn. However, there are some cards that help get around this. In combat, you can see the enemy's next move above their head, which allows you to strategically prepare. So for example, if you see the enemy about to block, you know you're better off playing a damage card than defending, as the enemy wouldn't be attacking you the next turn. Another key part of the combat is the potion and relic system. So in the game, you can store up to 3 potions with unique abilities that are only one-time uses. So potions would generally allow you to get out of sticky situations. Another major factor of the game is the relic system. Relics are permanent items that range in rarity and give you a passive benefit. So as you're playing, you'll be looking for relics and potions that help out your build. So the premise of combat overall involves you drawing your hand of cards randomly and then strategically deciding what cards and abilities to use based on the enemy type and the cost of the cards. When you win a battle, you'll receive gold, potentially a relic and potion, and a choice of 1 card that you can add to your deck from 3. The game also has an experience system for each character, which lets you unlock some cards and relics. And now you're probably wondering, what makes Slay the Spire such a unique game that's worth playing? Slay the Spire's difficulty can be summarized as easy to pick up but hard to master. It is a game that requires you to master the core concepts and mechanics to actually finish it. With permadeath, you need to create a new deck every game. Now add in the fact that you only get to choose from random cards, it means every deck will be different. This forces you to play different playstyles that are tailored around your understanding of the game and the cards you have available. It's a game where if you wanted to play a certain build, that's great, but what happens when you can't get the cards you needed? That's where being able to understand the core game mechanics and pivot with what you have is so critical. And this is the appeal of Slay the Spire. It's a game where every run will be different, where your understanding of the game's core mechanics and ability to adapt will mean the difference of victory or defeat. But also don't forget, like most card games, luck plays its part. So when it comes to content, the game has standard mode, a daily climb/challenge mode, and a custom mode. So the daily climb has a unique modifier challenge that you get a score on. At the end of your run, your score is placed on the leaderboard. The other game mode is custom mode, where you can modify and customize a range of different settings. For the end game of Slay the Spire, it is the Ascension game mode. So once you finish a run of the game with a character, you unlock Ascension mode. So in this mode, you complete a run with a negative modifier that makes the game harder. Every time you complete a run, you're given another harder modifier. So overall, when it comes to game time, while you can technically finish Slay the Spire in a couple of hours, its procedurally generated content means you could play for hundreds if not thousands of hours more. Okay, so console. When it comes to performance, I didn't run into any major issues. However, a major concern going into the game was the controls. Inherently, a card game on touchscreen or PC allows an easier sense of intuitive controls. But in saying that, the controls of Slay the Spire work perfectly on controller. Realistically, the game's complexity comes from the strategy of deciding what cards to play. So this means it doesn't require multiple button inputs. This allows the game to make the most important button commands easily accessible. You'll see this in the controls with buttons like left trigger being used to quickly see your draw pile, so you can see which card's about to come. The right trigger lets you see cards you've discarded. The X button lets you activate your potion menu, where you can also use the left joystick or D-pad to go through any important sections on the screen, like seeing your cards, enemy units, relics, or potions. Allowing you to use the joystick or D-pad to navigate is a nice feature, as the D-pad allowed for a more controlled button to select between cards. The only major concern with the controller is that the Y button will instantly end your turn. So while this means more experienced players can quickly end their turn, which is important because runs are timed, also means that if you accidentally hit the button, you can lose your turn. However, if this is an issue, you can actually reassign any of the buttons to make a layout that suits you. And overall, because the game's less intensive requirements on button commands, it means the controller works great. Overall, Slay the Spire is such a unique experience. It is a game that truly is easy to play but hard to master. It is a well-crafted and fine-tuned experience that truly rewards and requires the player to understand its core mechanics. While it's a style of gameplay that might not be for everyone, it's randomly generated content where every game feels similar yet different makes Slay the Spire a truly worthwhile experience. So if you're looking for a card game where you'll be constantly building new decks and strategically planning your next move, then Slay the Spire might be the game for you. Thank you for listening and please subscribe.